Good morning. We are learning the Nishmas Mendel, Mariam Bas Kalman Ruvain. We are on Chafhei Amud Beis. Here we go. Okay, so we're at the two dots. Rishmal Aimer. Rishmal says that you're not allowed to use itzran because of the kavod of Shabbos. Okay, so my taima. What's the reason you can't use itzran? Amarava mitoch sherecha ra gzera shema yanichana v'yetze. Because the smell of itzran is bad. There's a concern that a person may be so bothered by the smell of itzran that they're going to leave. They're going to leave the room with it. Right? It's interesting. He doesn't say there's a concern they're going to extinguish it. He says their concern is that they're going to leave the room. So the Gemara says, Amarle Abaye. Abaye, his counterpart, says v'yetze. Let the person leave. Who cares if he leaves the room? Fine. If you want to tell me the concern is going to extinguish it, fine. But if you want to tell me the concern is he's going to walk out, shkayach, who cares? Amalei, Rava says to Abaya, Shani Omer, because I hold hadlakas ner b'Shabbos chova, that lighting the candle on Shabbos is an obligation. Now, how does that answer the question? So the Rishonim add a few words, which Rava is alluding to. It's not just I hold that lighting a candle on Shabbos is an obligation. I hold that having the candle in the room that you eat is an obligation. In other words, the question is always like, where do you have to light the lights of Shabbos? So there's a bunch of different sources, as we'll continue through the Masechta, that seemingly touch upon different elements of the chiyuv of lighting candles. There is an element of shalom bayis, which we already saw. Shalom bayis is that you're not going to trip over yourself, and that's going to be true everywhere in the house. You need to make sure that there's light anywhere in the house, right? It's not about specifically where you eat, but there's also an element of kavod Shabbos, which is the glory, and when you're at a very special place, you have extra light. Although you could argue nowadays we like dimming the lights, but that's just because you like doing the opposite, and that makes it honorable. But the point is that you want to have something significant, and therefore having the light specifically where you eat is a part of it. And therefore Rava says, since I hold that there's an obligation to be having the lights where you eat, and the smell over here is going to be bad, what are you going to do? You're going to pick up your food and eat somewhere else. You're not going to fulfill the mitzvah of alakas neros, and that's why it's a problem. To Amar of Nachman bar Rav Zavda, va'amri le Amar of Nachman bar Rava, Amarav halakas ner b'Shabbos chova, that there is an obligation to light the candles where you eat. And then just parenthetically, once there's part of this memra, part of this teaching, he also mentions rechitzas yadayim v'raglayim b'chamin arvis rishus, that washing one's hands and feet with hot water in the evening is optional. Vani omer mitzvah, and I say it's a mitzvah. Okay, a mitzvah to wash your hands and feet before Shabbos. Some understand it's on Shabbos with pre-warmed water, but most understand this is referring to there's a mitzvah to do so. Mitzvah means not chova. Chova means full-fledged obligation. Mitzvah means it's a good thing. It's a very good thing, right? Okay. Did I say we're learning the memory, Rav? Yeah, okay, fine, sorry. Okay, my mitzvah. What is the nature of this mitzvah? To Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Rav Kachayim and Hagol Shel Rabbi Yehuda Bar Ilai. There was a practice of Rabbi Yehuda Bar Ilai, one of the greats. Tanaim Erev Shabbos Meviim Lo Areva Malei Chamin. They would bring him a tub filled with hot water. Okay, it seems like there was no bathhouse in their location or something along those lines. V'rochetz panav yadav v'raglav, and he would wash his face, hands, and feet. Umisate fiyoshe bistina hamitzuyatzin, and he would wrap himself and sit in a linen cloak which had tzitzis on it. Okay, we'll come back to that linen cloak that has tzitzis on it in a moment. V'dom l'malach Hashem tzvakos, and he looks like an angel. He looked like an angel. His face shines. He's wrapped up in his tzitzis. Sometimes you see someone who has that angelic whatever, and that's what he looked like. Okay, this is what he would do. Erev Shabbos v'talmidim mechabed mimenu kanfei chsusan, and his students would hide the corners of their garments. They would also be wearing linen garments, but they would not be putting tzitzis on their linen garments. Okay, so they all had, keep in mind, back in the day, they didn't dress like we did. They had these four, you ever see someone wrapped around in a cloak? They had a cloak. So his cloak of linen had tzitzis in it. Theirs did not. Okay, and let's just pause over here. We'll come back to the tzitzis discussion. But the point is that we see from Rabbi Yehuda ben Elai, that Erev Shabbos, this is what he would do. To get himself properly prepared for Shabbos, he would bathe himself, he would wash his hands and feet, and then he would be fully prepared for Shabbos. Then he'd wrap himself up. And so similarly, there's a mitzvah, not a chova, a mitzvah to go ahead and wash our hands and feet. One other thing before we go further, and that is this discussion about lighting the Shabbos candles where we eat. Do you have to do so or not? Right? We saw it seems to be a bit of a discussion between Rava and Abai. Rava says it's a chova. You're obligated to do so. So the poskim say that yes, the lighting should be in that vicinity. It does not have to be at the table per se, and especially nowadays as it gets there's a whole discussion about our lights in general. Do we even need to light Shabbos candles, right? The whole point of Shabbos candles is to make sure there's light in your room and light in the place you're eating. So once you have light in the place that you're eating, you have your dining room lights on, you don't necessarily even have to light Shabbos candles. I was just speaking to someone the other day who doesn't like leaving candles unattended in their home, and they go away for meals often. And so they were like, how do I light Shabbos candles? Should I put them in the sink? They don't want to leave any candles. So I said, make a bracha. Turn off your dining room and living room lights. Make a bracha. Turn the lights on. You're 100% fulfill your obligation. They say Rav Schechter, and they say, I haven't heard it from him or from his children, but apparently, when his wife lights the Shabbos candles, they turn off lights in the living room, dining room. She makes the bracha on the Shabbos candles, and then lights the Shabbos candles, and at the same time, he says Amen, and lights and turns on the lights in the living room, dining room, because there's an argument to be made that that's even more important. So nowadays, the emphasis on making sure that those candles are right by the table is not necessarily as pronounced, and there's obviously, for those who have children, I don't know about you, but it makes me a little bit nervous to have those candles on the table. So whatever, they should be in the room, but you don't have an obligation to have them right there. And many poskim say, as long as they're somewhere in the room, it adds to the kavod, it adds to the honor of the place, and therefore you fulfill the obligation. But they should be in the dining vicinity, even if they're not literally lighting up the table itself. Okay? Fine. That's the bottom line. They don't have to be on the table. They don't have to be right there. In my house, I have my table and my lights are all the way on the other side of the room, but they're in the general vicinity, and that's completely sufficient. Okay, even according to Rava's opinion. Okay, fine. Back to this discussion of tzitzis. Okay, and so Rav Yehuda ben Levi would wear tzitzis on his linen clothing. His students would hide the corners. Okay, they would kind of fold them over so he wouldn't know if they're wearing tzitzis or not. Amar lahen, Rav Yehuda said to them, Banai, my children. Yeah, this refers to students. Lo kach shanis lechem, did I not teach you? Sadim tzitzis, tzitzis, in regards to linen piece of clothing. Beis Shammai protrin, uvesil mechayven. Beis Shammai says you're exempt. Beis Hillel says you are chayiv. What's the rationale behind this discussion? What are tzitzis strings made of? Most typically wool. Linen and wool is shatnez. You can't wear shatnez. Someone just gave me some my brother-in-law just gave me some old sweatshirts, and not from him, it was from a friend, not from my brother-in-law. It's from a friend, and I was going through, I found okay, a lot of stuff I didn't like. I found this one amazing, beautiful sweatshirt, and it was and my wife said, okay, well, give it to Shatnez before she puts it in, to get a check for Shatnez, because it was made from wool, and we looked at the tag right before he dropped off at Shatnez, it says, wool and linen. Okay, I think we know this is Shatnez. Okay, bottom line is, that linen, so typically you'd say linen and wool, there'd be Shatnez, but there is a juxtaposition, but because of the mitzvah of tzitzis, and because of a hekesh, learned to the psukim, Beis Hillel understands that there is no issue of Shatnez when you have the wool strings together with the linen garment. Beis Shammai does not hold of that hekesh, and therefore Beis Shammai says there is shatnez, and you cannot have wool tzitzis, and therefore he says do not put tzitzis on a linen garment. But Beis Hillel says you do. Okay, so the halacha is always, except for all the exceptions we saw earlier in the Masechta, the halacha is always like Beis Hillel. So why in the world wouldn't the students put tzitzis on their linen garments? Why are they doing this? Why are they not putting it? They're hiding their tzitzis. The inu savri gzer mishum ksus laila. The students said, yes, it's true. The halacha does follow Beis Hillel, and therefore there is a chi of tzitzis. But when is there a mitzvah of tzitzis? Only during the day. Tzitzis is a mitzvah seishes magrama. That's why women are not mechuyeves in tzitzis, because it's a daytime mitzvah. So only when you're fulfilling the mitzvah would Beis Hillel say you are allowed to wear wool and linen together because you're fulfilling the mitzvah, right? But if you're not fulfilling the mitzvah, i.e., it's at night, then there'd be no mitzvah. So there's a concern. So during the day you can wear it, and now you have to take it off. That they were concerned, I'm going to leave it on at night, I'm going to leave it on at times, or I'm going to wear a nighttime garment, in which case it would be patur from tzitzis, and therefore if I'm accustomed to wearing woolen tzitzis on my linen garments, I'm going to end up being over a lav of wearing shatnez and not fulfilling a mitzvah, and therefore better off. And therefore Chazal, which is fascinating, Chazal came along and mevatel the mitzvah of tzitzis in order to prevent a person from being in violation of shatnez. Okay, so that's where they come. So yes, halacha is like Beis Hillel. They're really, in theory, a linen garment should have tzitzis on it, even though it be wool and linen and be full-fledged shatnez. But when it comes to something which there's a concern you're going to wear at night, therefore Chazal came along and said, better you don't have tzitzis on it in order to ensure that you're not going to be in violation of shatnez when you wear it at night or when it's a nighttime garment. With me? Yeah, fine. Bottom line is, yeah. Seemingly, we possibly like the students, and yes, but so the bottom line is that for our intents and purposes, we see that washing this was brought in as a proof to the fact that it's important to wash one's hands and feet in preparation for Shabbos, and yeah, that's what we do. We try to shower before Shabbos. Okay, now we're gonna go on a little bit of a gadget over here. So this from Yirmiyahu. Yirmiyahu is crying over the loss of the Beis Hamikdash, and he says, "V'tiznach mishalom nafshi, nafshi sitova." Okay, so my soul gave up on having peace. Okay, I've forgotten goodness. Okay, that's what Yirmiyahu says. We're in the middle of Chafei Amud Beis, so it's by the two dots. Okay, so he says, "Mai v'tiznach mishal nafshi." What does it mean that my soul gave up on having peace? Amar Vavo, Zo Hadlakas Ner b'Shabbos. It's a reference to he gave up on being able to light candles on Shabbos, right? Lighting candles on Shabbos, we know, brings about shalom, brings about harmony. And Yirmiyahu is saying after the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash, there was such poverty. Remember, you see these Gemaras saying, you only have enough to light one Hanukkah candle. Yeah, in the time of Yirmiyahu, there was such poverty, they didn't have enough to light Shabbos candles. Terrible. And that is, therefore his soul gave up on having peace because there wasn't even enough to light Shabbos candles. Okay, then the Gemara now goes on a tangent and discusses the rest of the pasuk. Now, Shisi Tova, I forgot goodness. What is the reference to I forgot goodness? Amar of Yirmiyah, Zo Beis HaMerchatz. There's a reference to the bathhouse. Okay, so basically, a bathhouse is something which is good for a person. Having a bathhouse is good, right? So imagine not having a shower. Imagine we can think for a second of the 180 people who've been stuck for 180 days without having showers, right? It's insane, right? So forgotten goodness, right? They were going through such despair, through such poverty. They didn't have bathhouses. They didn't have a place to wash themselves up. Okay, Amar Rav Yochanan Zo Rechitzis Daim V'Raglaim B'Chamin. It's a reference to simply even washing one's hands in warm water. They didn't have even warm water. You have to have wood to kindle to have a fire, to then heat up the water. They didn't have anything. They had nothing. They were completely impoverished. Okay, Rabbi Yitzchak Nafchamar Zo Mitana the Kelim Nam Shaleha. It's a reference to a nice bed and nice sheets that are on it. They didn't have that. Okay, they didn't have a place to sleep. They slept on the floor. They slept in straw. They didn't have anywhere to sleep. Rabbi Abba Omer Zo Mita Mutzas. There's a reference to a nice bed, meaning what does the word tova mean? Okay, so it seems like Rav Abba is going on a little bit more of a tangent. Not necessarily is what Rav Yirmiyah was missing, but he's more defining what is goodness. Zomita mutzas, it's a nice bed. And a wife that is adorned for Tamid Chachamim. What does that mean, a wife that's adorned for Tamid Chachamim? The simple understanding is that a person who has great midos, that's what tova is. You want to know what good is? Good is a basic, okay lifestyle. You have a nice bed. It doesn't mean you have like a beautiful house, a five-story mansion. What it means is you have a good life. A good life is a reference to, basic goodness of a bed to sleep on and a devoted and a wife with good midos, a spouse with good midos. That is tova. That is a good life. Okay, fine. Tanar Rabbanan. Okay, now we go on. Since we're talking about goodness, we're going to talk about other elements of how you define what is good. Eza Asher, who is wealthy. Okay, Kol sheyesh lo nachas ruach ba'oshro divrei Meir. This is anyone who has pleasure in their wealth. That is someone who's wealthy, right? Very similar to the Mishnah in Pirkei Avos, the famous Mishnah of Ezo Asher, Sameach Bechalko, someone who's happy with what they have. That is wealth. Wealth is not how much you have; it is your relationship to wealth that makes you wealthy, right? You can have, right? So that's the opinion of Rameir. Simin Mat Kas. Okay, what does Simin Mat Kas stand for? It stands for the different people that we're going to be quoting. Mat is Meir, Tes is Tarfon, Kuf is Akiva, and Samach is Rav Yossi. Okay, so again, keep in mind, all these teachings were taught orally until Ravina Ravashi came along and wrote them down, and therefore you have these mnemonics from time to time, just to remind you who said what, and they had all these memory games that we are spoiled. We don't have to have any memory. I don't have to know anything at all in this world. I don't know any phone numbers? I know my spouse's phone number. I don't even know my home phone number. What's it called? I don't. But that's it, right? We don't need to know anything because everything is written down. They did not live in that world, and they had to exercise their memory, and they used mnemonics to do so. Okay, so we Sarah Meir say what is wealth? Wealth is anyone who has benefit, anyone who enjoys their wealth. Not how much you have, but how you respond to it. Rav Tarfon says, Kol sheyesh lo mea kramim. Anyone has 100 vineyards, umea sados, and 100 fields, umea avadim, and 100 workers working in the field. That's who is wealthy. Now, what in the world is he talking about? So some Achronim understand this as as an allegory, as a metaphor, and he's referring to, all these things refer to 100 volumes of Gemara and 100 Brysos and whatever. It's all an allegory. But the simplest understanding, I think it's Marsha who says this. It says no. It's like a facetious statement. It says, you know what's wealthy? When you get to 100 vineyards, that's when you're wealthy. You know when you're wealthy? When you get like the Lamborghini, that's when you're going to be wealthy. And basically, it's like not a cynical, but like a facetious comment. He's basically saying, there's no number. There's no number like, then you're really going to be happy with what you have. He's basically like mocking the person who is aspiring, saying, at this point, I'm going to have everything. It's not true. We know it's not true. We run after it anyways. But we know it's not true. There is no point where we say, now I'm really going to have it all. Now I'm really going to be wealthy. And studies have shown that, there's basically a basic threshold of being comfortable, and then you're happy. Beyond that, it actually makes little difference. Your happiness level between you and, Elon Musk or Bill Gates is actually probably negligible, if at all. And basically, once you cross a certain threshold of wealth, it really is not an indication of your, it doesn't have, if a person's in poverty, yes, it impacts their mental health, their mental well-being. But once you cross a basic level of comfort, wealth itself does not really have any impact on a person's well-being or feeling good about themselves. And that's where Shafran is basically getting at. Oh yeah, if you get 100, whatever, if you have the right car, then it's not going to happen. That's basically his point. Okay. Rabbi Yossi Omer Kol Sheyesh Lo Beisa Kisei Samach L'Shulchano. Anyone has a bathroom near their table. Okay. Keep in mind, back in the day, they didn't have bathrooms necessarily or next to one's house, but there's really a broader statement that he's making, and that is, you can have all the wealth in the world, but if your physical or mental health is not in place, the bathroom is basically the place where you took care of your physical needs. And he says, yeah, take and take and take, but if you don't have a place to take care of your health, if your health is not good, you got nothing. So yeah, you can be the wealthiest person in the world, but if your life is physically or mentally falling apart, it doesn't really help you. And that's how many of the Rishonim and Achronim understand Rav Yossi, that what he's saying is that it's really about your health, in which case it's really out of your hands. So you can run after all the wealth you want. It's really in God's hands, because if a person doesn't have the health that they need, it's really meaningless. Okay? Fine. Let's go. Now we go back to some discussion about the different substances you can use to light candles. Tani Reb Brisa, Reb Shimon Elazar Omer, Imalikin Bitsari. You can't use balsam. Okay? My taima Amarab Toch Sharecho Nodef. It has a beautiful smell. There's a concern that it has this delicious smell. So sometimes you see something, a person is a little bit more impulsive. They may say, oh, I love the smell. They'll take put their finger in and, lick it, put it on their food, put it in their nose, whatever it is. They're going to take a little bit out of it. And what's the problem with that? It's kiboy. It's a form of extinguishing, right? If I take some of the oil out from what is going to light the candle, that is a form of extinguishing, and therefore it's a problem. Abaye says, Lema mar mipnei shu'af. Maybe the issue should be because balsam is actually a very flammable substance. And the reason you can't light with it is because a person might actually extinguish it, because it's something which could cause a fire. So a person lit it, and then you see, it's starting to gain traction, it's getting a little bit of a fire. So it says, Rabbi says, I agree. He says, Chadav Odka Amar. Really, it's really saying that reason and another reason. Meaning, chadam neshuaf. One is it's volatile, it's flammable, and therefore it could cause problems. The od gezer sham istavik menu. There is also a concern. There's also a concern that a person might take benefit from it, and therefore take out of it, therefore he would be performing he'd basically be involved in extinguishing, and that would be a problem. Okay, now we have a terrible story about this type of oil. He chamasa to have a sania la lekalsa. There was a woman, a mother-in-law, who hated her daughter-in-law. Okay, it happens apparently. Okay, Amrullah. Okay, zil ikashit b'mishcha da'afarsama. She said to this woman, "Go, I have an idea. You want to be adorned, you want to be attractive to your husband, go cover yourself in balsam oil." Okay? Azla ikashit, she went ahead and did so. Ki asa, when she came, Amrla zil isli shraga, go and light the lamp. Right? It's dark in here. Could you light the lamp? Right? Azla asla shraga, she went and lit the lamp. Inpach banura v'achalta, the fire leapt out at her and consumed her. Okay? So if anyone complains about their in-laws not being good to them, yeah, okay, that puts things in context, right? Okay, we could stop here at that terrible story. Let's stop here. Okay, have a wonderful day. Have a good Shabbos. I'll see you all tomorrow afternoon.